It's like every time you think you've got a handle on the latest tech, something new pops up and throws you for a loop, you know? It's a lot to keep up with.
It really is the speed of everything. It's kind of mind-blowing when you stop and think about it. And for companies especially, I mean, trying to stay ahead of the curve, it's got to be a full-time job in itself.
Well, that leads perfectly into what we're diving into today. We've got a whole pile of stuff here, articles, a presentation even, all about Rooman Technologies. And they seem to be making some pretty big promises, bridging the talent gap, you know, future-proofing businesses.
They're involved in a lot of different areas from what I can tell. IT staffing and corporate training, of course, but then also these like full-scale digital transformation projects. It's a lot.
It is, and those IT staffing claims, they definitely caught my eye. Seamless integration, top-tier talent, flexibility. It's practically the buzzword bingo of the tech staffing world.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's using those terms, but what do they even mean anymore? Like, top-tier talent, yeah, but top-tier for what? The needs are so specific these days. We're not just talking about someone who can code. We need, like, cybersecurity experts who can anticipate threats before they even happen, cloud architects who can build these systems that can, like, scale on demand. It's a whole different ballgame.
And even then, are those the areas that are really hurting? I noticed they even mentioned VLSI design, which I'll admit I had to look up. Is that really a widespread need, or are they just trying to sound super high-tech?
That's a really good point, because VLSI, that's seriously specialized stuff. Like, we're talking microchip design at its most fundamental. It makes me think they might be targeting some pretty niche markets, which could be smart if they actually have recruiters who know that world. But yeah, I wonder, are they spreading themselves too thin, trying to be everything to everyone?
Okay, so we've got the staffing side, but then there's the training aspect, which is almost a whole other beast. Cybersecurity training, that makes sense, obviously, given how everything's online these days. But they're also doing AI training, which who even knows what that means?
Yeah.
Are we talking about like basic coding or building the next, robot overlords?
Right. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's easy to slap AI powered on everything these days, but are they offering these like superficial courses that just scratch the surface? Or are we talking about like in-depth programs on machine learning, deep learning, even the ethics of it all? Because that's what a future-proof skill set really means, right? Being able to adapt as the technology evolves.
Exactly. And how's someone supposed to even know what they're getting from the outside looking in? It's all marketing, right?
It really is. One thing that did stand out to me, though, was their emphasis on partnerships. And I'm not just talking about any partnerships. They're working directly with universities and big-name companies. Microsoft, IBM, even Tata and Infosys were mentioned. This goes beyond just training. They're building what they call a talent pipeline.
Okay, so buzzword alert again, right? Talent pipeline. What's that in plain English?
Basically, they're trying to directly influence who's coming out of school with what skills. So instead of universities just teaching whatever they think is important, Rooman's working with them and with these big companies to make sure graduates have the skills that are actually in demand. Like, what does Microsoft actually need from a new hire?
Oh, so it's about bridging that gap between what you learn in the classroom and what you actually need to know in the real world.
Exactly. And they even say their goal is to have graduates who are not just theoretically sound, but who can actually contribute from day one. Now, that's a bold statement. I mean, imagine if they could pull that off.
That would be huge, right? Bringing someone in who could just hit the ground running, no hand-holding, no catching them up to speed. They'd have a serious edge.
Absolutely. It would change the game, both in terms of productivity and in terms of innovation. But to know if they can actually back up that claim, well, we need to dig a little deeper. Look at their methods, their results, the whole picture.
So, okay, we're talking training and staffing. That's a pretty solid base, you'd think.
Yeah.
But that's not all they do, is it?
Yeah.
They've got temporary staffing, one-time placements, and then like this whole other section for IT services. Honestly, I'm not even going to try to list it all, but we're talking cloud migration, cybersecurity audits, the whole shebang.
It's a lot, for sure. Makes you wonder about their strategy, right?
Yeah.
Are they aiming to be like the one-stop shop for all things IT, or is that a recipe for spreading themselves too thin? You know what they say?
Think about it. If you're a company that's going through this huge digital transformation, maybe you want one partner who can handle the whole thing.
That's a really interesting way to look at it because, yeah, digital transformation, everyone's throwing that term around, but what does it even mean half the time? With Rooman, though, they specifically talk about integrating, get this, artificial intelligence, artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence, AI, ANI, AGI, into their consulting services. They're not messing around with the acronyms, which makes you wonder if they really know their stuff or if it's just more buzz.
Okay, so time for a quick, explain it to me like I'm 5 breakdown here. We hear these terms, but what do they actually mean for, say, a regular retail company listening to this?
Right, good question. So for a retail company, ANI, that might be like using algorithms to personalize product recommendations for people shopping online. You've seen that, right? But AGI, now that's the next level. That's where theoretically you've got systems that can handle the really complex stuff like inventory, pricing, even supply chain logistics. And they're doing it all without, needing a human to hold their hand every step of the way.
Okay, so potentially a really big deal if it, actually works the way they say it does.
Yeah.
But then that brings up another question. Who's the brains behind all of this? We've talked about the company, but what about the people running the show?
So the CEO, Manish Kumar, he's the one calling the shots. Seems like he's got a background in education management, and he's an IIM Bangalore alum, which tell you something right there.
Oh yeah, they don't mess around over there. And speaking of not messing around, there was this quote from him in their presentation that really jumped out at me. He's talking about his vision for the company, and he says, "The globe very soon becoming an information-based world." That's quite a statement to make.
No kidding. It speaks to a certain level of ambition, wouldn't you say? It's not just about training or staffing. It's like they see themselves as a major player in shaping this future where information is the most valuable thing out there.
Which, let's be honest, isn't that far off from where we are now. Okay, so let's bring it back to our listener for a sec. They're probably listening to all of this thinking, okay, but what does this mean for me? What should they be taking away from this deep dive?
Honestly, I'd say this is just the jumping off point. Their website, their marketing materials, that's one thing. But you got to dig deeper, right? Look for those independent reviews, case studies, the stuff that shows actual results. Maybe even try to connect with people who've actually used their services. Get the inside scoop.
Yeah.
Talk a good game. Evidence over promises. That's what I always say.
Solid advice for anyone in that position. But looking beyond Rooman specifically, I feel like this whole deep dive has uncovered a much bigger issue. The tech world is moving so fast that it's practically impossible to keep up, let alone get ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just individuals who are feeling it. Companies, entire industries are struggling to keep pace. It really makes you wonder, can the way we've always done education, can it even handle this? Do we need to completely rethink how we're training people for jobs that might not even exist yet in 5-10 years?
That's a question we could spend a whole other episode unpacking. It's not just about finding the right company or program, it's about looking at the whole system. And who knows, maybe that's where the real innovation needs to happen.
Could be. Change is the one constant in tech, that's for sure. And the people who figure out how to not just adapt to it, but stay ahead of it, those are the ones who are going to thrive.
Now, there's something to think about. So as we wrap up this deep dive, hopefully this gives you, the listener, a good starting point to explore Rooman technologies further and, maybe more importantly, to navigate the ever-changing world of tech itself.